Warning, the following video contains mature content. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. This is another video in my ongoing series about psychology, and we're continuing with Sigmund Freud, and I have been analyzing, no pun intended, but I've been analyzing his various books. In the description section I'll be posting the link to the first video in this series, my introduction to Sigmund Freud, along with my other video I did regarding other two videos, one on hysteria and hypnotism, and also on his first major landmark work, The Interpretation of Dreams. My ultimate goal is to go through each one of Freud's written works and discuss them in detail, tell you my opinions on them, and see what you all have to say or think about Freud, his theories, and the various things that he discussed. I'll be also doing the same thing for Carl Jung as well in the near future. So I've read all of Freud's works before, but to prepare for these videos I've been rereading his works so that I can give a better assessment and summarize them for all of you. And I went back to the Penguin Classic edition of the collection right here entitled The Psychology of Love. And this contains numerous works by Freud. The first one, which is the main discussion of the video, of this particular video, is the fragment of an analysis of hysteria of Dora. And Dora was this is a pen or a pseudonym for Freud's patient. I forget her actual name. Peter Gay, in his biography of Freud, discusses this case in great pretty substantial amount of pages, about 10 pages I think he devotes to the discussion of Dora and the case study of Dora. If I remember correctly, Peter Gay described this case study as a failure, and Freud, even though Freud would never have called it as such, viewed it as such, and it even comes across to the reader when you are reading the case study that this was an utter failure. The thing is that to summarize the entire case study as best as I can, Dora was a woman that came to Freud. Actually, it was Dora's father who suggested that Freud analyze Dora. And Dora had been having hysterical symptoms. She had issues with breathing and certain symptoms, more physiological symptoms involving walking and respiratory and things like this. And Freud, no one could figure out what was wrong with her, and Freud had determined that even though she'd spent months at certain spas for recreation and things like this, that it was something in the mind. And basically he discovers that she had a episode where she had there were some family friends. There was a husband and wife. They were family friends of her father's. And the husband, the family friend, basically tried to take advantage of Dora, grabbed her. She was like a teenager, I believe, at the time, and her father's friend, who was married, a married man, basically grabbed her and kissed her, and she had felt his erection against her, and she had never experienced anything like this before, and had another experience by this lake. They would go vacationing out on these lakes, and had another experience where he, I believe, proposed to her, or said something to that effect, or told her that he loved her and things like this. Well, the case study is actually catered by Freud to be almost perfect for his theory. What I mean by that is that here you have the concept of childhood fantasy and sexuality. There is analysis of two dreams, and again, as I discussed in the book The Interpretation of Dreams, I discussed in my video on The Interpretation of Dreams by Sigmund Freud, he is convinced that dreams are wish fulfillments. At this stage, he is utterly convinced that all dreams are wish fulfillments of a sexual manner. And these true dreams that Dora relates to Freud, I read them, just his description, and his conclusions that he came to of course, I didn't see any of it in there. But of course, I've already admitted my bias. I do not consider myself a student of the Freudian school of thought in psychology. So therefore, when I'm looking at someone's transcript of dreams, I'm not thinking of just topics of sexuality when I'm hearing someone's dream. But Freud manages to concoct, especially with the first dream, a total interpretation that caters to the concept that it's of sexuality, concept of lust for sexuality. And I could read the entire dream, and I'm not going to do that. I'll leave that for those who want to do further research. But essentially, he concludes that she's having these, unbeknownst to her, she tries to repress. Dora tried to repress these sexual feelings towards her father's friend, who showed her real physical affection. Even tried to take advantage of her, was not as Prince Charming as some people may think. Definitely an older man, married man, taking advantage of or at least proposing his love to a much younger person than himself, who's single. This is a married man doing that, and so she tried repressing the dream work in connection to what had actually happened to her in her waking life. In the second dream, though, this is where it gets into the second part of this video. This is, again, this whole case study is just so perfect for Freud, which makes me wonder whether it went down the way he said it did, just in general. But the other dream, which he didn't have a chance to finish because Dora actually quit analysis. She'd never fully agreed with Freud. She thought Freud was full of crap, and actually quit analysis prematurely. But during their last session, she related to Freud a second dream, which he didn't have a chance to fully analyze, where essentially Freud determines that this is the early stage of what will be called the Electra Complex. In other words, this brings to the discussion of what is the Oedipus and what is the Electra Complex. These are the Oedipus Complex, for sure, is the crowning achievement of Freudian psychology. And it is the concept that when we are children, when we are infants, the largest affection, the sole source of love and affection is from our mother. And when we have a rival, when we get older, when we're like 2 years old, 3 years old, we have rivals that seem to get in the way of our parental love and affection. And we hate the rival. It is stemmed from the Oedipus myth, where Oedipus never knew his parents, and he was sent away, or he was orphaned. I forget exactly the legend, but a prophecy was told that the son would kill the father and take over his kingdom. And the way that this is done is that Oedipus, unbeknownst to him, gets in a fight with his father. He doesn't know it's his father, and kills his father, and then marries and sleeps with his mother. This is the Oedipus legend, the Greek Oedipus legend. And Freud believed that there was a inerrant, sort of genetic, if you will, taboo against incest. He called it the incest barrier. But what the Oedipus complex is that it's similar to that. In his opinion, it revolves around sexuality. It's this idea that if you're a small boy, you're first affectionate, romantic, and sexual. And we'll get into this into future videos, but at this point, bear with me on this simplistic explanation, is that your sole love is for your mother. And you have a rival who gets in your way, you hate the rival. And for the small boy, it is usually the father figure, his father, and he starts competing with the father, and he realizes that he can't win his mother's love. Or he differentiates between the love that his mother gives him and the love that the mother gives to the father, and then he aspires to be an ally to his father. It's the same thing with the Electra complex for women. According to Freud, small girl is daddy's little girl, mother gets in the way, there's competition, and then there's finally reconciliation, and then life goes on. In the second analysis of Dora, Freud basically spells out the Electra complex and says that this is what Dora was experiencing. Because what effectively happens is when the stage in these two complexes, the Oedipus and the Electra, when when you reconcile with the ally parent, you repress all of those feelings and sexual emotions and thoughts that you have towards the primary figure, whether it's for the boy, the mother, the girl, the father. So the second dream, Freud is telling Dora, these are your repressed Electra complex feelings and emotions bubbling up in your dreams. So, again, I'm not even saying that I believe in the Oedipus Complex or the Electra Complex. Again, I am more of a person that's in the Jungian school of thought of psychology. From my understanding, I don't think Jung totally disavowed and destroyed or refuted the Oedipus Complex. There are holes in the Oedipus Complex, to be sure. For example, even the legend itself, it's very fascinating that Freud would build a complex, a psychological complex, off of this Greek legend, because Oedipus himself was not raised by his father or his mother. So he didn't even know who his parents were. He didn't even have the chance to experience the complex that his legend was birthed out of. Also, there's another flaw with this, and this is the flaw that I've seen with Freud's theories, is that Freud was isolated in continental Europe until he had to move to London because of the Holocaust. But he never traveled outside of Europe, except when he went to the United States with Jung to give lectures at Clark University. But he did not have a very worldly view in his theories. And I believe that was his flaw. Because the thing is that to have a successful Oedipus complex, and Freud was convinced that we all go through this, that every person passes through the Oedipus or Electra complex, depending on your gender. But there are flaws with this. For an example, what if you're raised by only a mother who never takes another husband, never has a boyfriend? I mean, I know this is extreme hypotheticals here, but seriously, when we are talking about a science like psychology, or any science, you need to throw in the variables. You need to be able to say, but what if this happens? Can this be scientifically proven? Can this be replicated and then proven again and again with different people? What if you have a son who has a single mother who never takes another wife? Let's say the father dies before the child is born, or is born but doesn't remember the father figure, and the mother stays single for the rest of while she's raising her kid. Where does the boy experience the Oedipus complex? Because according to Freud, you need to have this father figure that gets in the way, is a competitor for mother's affection. What if you don't have that competitor? Also, certain cultures like Aborigines, Native Americans, certain African tribes, South American tribes, have a much more broader concept of family. The nuclear family doesn't exist. There are certain cultures where you give birth to your son and then you rotate your kids. You share your kids. The whole tribe raises you. So how can you have an Oedipus complex when every woman in the tribe is your mother? Every male in the tribe is your father, or your uncle, or a father figure. It just, again, this is this concept of, the variables between cultures. And I don't think Freud was thinking of these things when he was writing his theory, mainly because his ultimate experience that dawned on him was him analyzing himself and analyzing other Viennese, Europeans in general, and concluding that this must be something that everybody goes through. Now, are there elements of the Oedipus complex that are true? Of course, a young kid wants the affection of the parental figure and gets jealous of other people. This is, of course, a natural occurrence that happens in human society if you are in the sort of that sort of parental or family unit, excluding the other cultural differences I just described. So, of course, that's natural, but all the other psychological things that are going on there that Freud was saying, this idea of the incest barrier, the sexual wants and needs that seems to stem from this early relationship between the mother and the child, these are all things that I think have no weight because of the factors involved with different cultures and the attitudes towards this. And you cannot replicate it very well because you'd have to ask a small child what it is that he is feeling. And whether he says, yeah, I'm jealous, I want mommy's affection, a child does not know what you're talking about when you say, do you have these sort of sexual urges that a mature adult would know. So it's very hard to replicate this concept and to figure out exactly if a kid even knows that this is what he or she is feeling on a psychological level. Now, in the next video, I'll be analyzing and looking at Freud's, another huge achievement of Freud's, which was his 3 essays on sexual theory. These are a little bit more substantial than the Oedipus Complex, mainly because he finally divulges into greater detail exactly what he means about when he's talking about infantile sexuality and things like this. And we find that the concept of infantile sexuality is not necessarily the same as adult sexuality. That there are these stages that we go through in our development, stages of development, that he goes into detail. So, again, this is basically what I wanted to say in this video, to introduce the Dora case study of Dora. It was his first major independent case study that was published outside of when he was on his own private practice, and Peter Gay calls it a failure. Freud himself admits that she walked out of Analysis, so you can't complete the analyzing, therefore it sort of falls through. And also the Oedipus Complex was rather appropriate, I believe, to mention in this video, because he discusses, without naming it yet, the Electra complex and applying it to Dora herself. Of course, she totally disagreed with Freud's findings of her own personality. So yes, please share your comments in the description section. I've had a couple viewers and subscribers discuss with me certain psychological concepts and my thoughts about Freud and things like this. And we'll be continuing on with this book, because there are several different papers that Freud wrote that are in this collection here by Penguin Classics, The Psychology of Love. So I'll be discussing the rest of this book, and then getting into Carl Jung relatively soon, but that's for future videos. So thank you everyone for watching, and have a good day.